Okay, for those of you returning to the channel, welcome back, and for those of you that are new here, that have just stumbled upon this video, then thank you for joining me, and welcome to my spoiler-filled review of Alien Earth Episode 5, In Space, No One. And so, yeah, I've seen the episode twice. Just before filming this review, I watched it a second time, and I've been really looking forward to sharing with you all my thoughts, especially on this particular episode. And I've really enjoyed watching these episodes a second time because it's in many ways confirming how I felt towards that episode initially. In some cases, I've actually enjoyed the episode more on second viewing, and in particular with this episode, episode 5, like I have kind of delved in to some of the criticisms from within the fan community. Like, I've been a member of AVB Galaxy now for years, and I had to follow them, and I had to watch their content religiously when it comes to anything Alien and Predator. They're a great channel, a great site, and I highly recommend them. And I've spoken to and I've seen a lot of criticism sort of in person as well as online in regards to this episode, and there's a lot of people kind of mixed about just this show overall, and you know, especially this episode. There's a lot of kind of negative criticism toward it, especially when it comes to sort of the logic of characters and sort of the choices that characters make in this episode. And so I really liked watching this episode again the second time, because it really kind of confirmed for me how I felt towards this episode. And I think I could be wrong, but I may be in a minority within sort of the Alien, fan community when it comes to this episode in how I felt about it, how I felt towards it. And so with episode 5, it's an episode that I kind of sensed we were going to get. Like, when I watched episode 1 to begin with, I felt it was quite clunky in its execution, mainly the first 30 minutes. But then at the same time, especially during the second viewing, I kind of felt like that maybe they were keeping a lot of the story with what goes down on that ship for later on in the season, maybe. And that is what we're getting here with episode 5. We're getting insight into what actually happened, hours before the Maginot, this deep space research vessel, plummets into Earth or crashes into Earth. And it's an episode where we are immersed within this vessel for an hour. And I've just got to say right off the bat, and I've said this already in my previous reviews for each of the episodes, but I just think the set design in this show is gorgeous. They do a beautiful job at recapturing the aesthetic and the essence and just the feel and the look of the Alien movies, specifically, those first two movies, Alien and Aliens, and even Alien 3, especially when it comes to the music. I adore the score in this show. It is in many ways echoing a very familiar sound when it comes to the, that classic Alien score from the original movie, but at the same time, it's very much an original piece of music, and I think just the way in which it honors sort of the score from the past movies, it's beautifully done. And along with the score and just in how this world is brought to life through the set design, the lighting, the cinematography, the costumes, as a lifelong fan of the Alien franchise, as someone who admires those movies, it does feel like that I'm home again. Just like what Fede Alvarez achieved with Alien Romulus, I think they've done the same year. I think Noah Hawley have done a fantastic job at immersing me into a world that does feel authentic. It's almost like you can taste and touch the grease and the sweat. Do you know what I mean? It's just the way in which the camera is used. Again, just very similar to how the camera would be used in the original movie, where it would be positioned in a way where it kind of really elevates the claustrophobic feel of these people being on this vessel together, all cooped up on this vessel. Like, it's a fairly big vessel. At the same time, it does a very good job at sort of really injecting that claustrophobic feeling within the episode, within this part of the story. So when it comes to one of the big talking points about this particular episode and what a lot of fans are talking about, and that is the logic of what goes down on this ship. You know, the choices that characters make, the things that characters do. And a lot of people have been really kind of tearing this particular episode apart. Again, whether it be online or from people that I've spoken to, in person. And I've been on the complete opposite side of where a lot of people, or how a lot of people have sort of watched this show or have sort of looked at this show or experienced it. And what I mean by that is, and I am going to defend this particular episode in regards to the logic here, but in a way that is honest, in a way that how I honestly felt about this episode on both viewings. And this is why I'm really happy and really glad that I watched the episode a second time, because it really confirmed to me how I felt on the first viewing. And granted, at first glance, yes, the logic on some people's decisions here and what they do in certain scenes and certain moments that allow sort of these events to unfold, it is a little, mind-boggling. Like, it does, it's like, really? Can you be that stupid? At first glance, it is. But I didn't really go into this episode sort of looking at it from that perspective. Like, I went into this episode looking at it that I was experiencing this story unfold with these group of characters, these group of people that are fractured, that are psychologically or mentally, vulnerable due to sort of the situation that they are with, that they are within, and sort of what it is that they've had to do for the last 65 years. This crew have been under the thumb, or they have devoted their life. They've been at the beck and call of this corporate entity for, a big part of their life. They've witnessed people die, to complete this mission that they've been sent on by Weyland-Yutani, and to get these, creatures, these horrifying creatures, and put themselves at, their lives at risk. And then you've got more insight as well then into Morrow, the character of Morrow, which I'm going to go into a little more later in the review. And you get all these layers, to these characters where it's not just as straightforward as them conducting an experiment and putting a mask on and actually not lighting up a fag. To me, what I was witnessing was the result of what these characters have been put through, not before the 65 years, before going on this mission, as well as where they, we find them at during this episode. And it kind of really lays bare, what humans or what we would do in these circumstances, in these situations. Like, regulations are going to be broken. Shortcuts are going to be made. We are flawed. We are very, very flawed, and I think that's what this show does, especially this episode, does beautifully here, and that is kind of really dive in to kind of that human aspect of this story, and that's how I was seeing it on, first viewing as well as second. I didn't find myself tearing the logic, apart and tearing people's decisions, and because I felt like the first episode had really set me up to kind of what to expect when it came to this group of characters, and that is to witness these characters that are very fractured, that are vulnerable from a psychological perspective, from a mental perspective, and you get a lot of moments in this episode that indicate that that's what this particular episode is doing or attempting to do. For example, when the science officer Chibuzor, who's played by Karen Aldridge, I think she does a wonderful job, by the way, with this character, and she's eating food around this alien parasite. And yeah, you do question, perhaps on surface level, like, from first glance, would you really be doing that? But again, what that scene does is gives you insight into where the character is mentally. Like, she looks at the eye creature, the Teoculus, and she's looking at it, she can feel it looking at her, and you could kind of sense this almost like a relationship going on here between this creature and herself. And she says to the creature, take a picture, it will last longer. And, I'm seeing it from how fractured and sort of where these characters are at mentally at this point in the story. Not the fact that they're eating a sandwich around some sort of scientific investigation in a lab. Yes, there might be a regulation, on the wall or in a file from Weyland-Yutani that states that no food or water is to be drank, within the labs or around any sort of scientific or alien objects or anything like that. But we are seeing people, or we're seeing characters here that I feel like represent in a way that would be authentic to how people would react at this moment in time during this point in the story, if that makes sense. There isn't a live feed from Weyland-Yutani watching every moment, and watching everything that these characters do on this ship. All they care about is that they bring these creatures back. Crew are expendable. And I just saw it more, to me it just felt more authentic. Yeah, I think a lot of it is, a lot of that was due to the setup within the show during episode 1. And yeah, that's how I felt. We are catching these characters get caught up in the moment. And again, it just goes back to what I feel like people would do caught up in such a moment during that time. And I just feel like this is what Noah Hawley is doing such a really good job at with this show. And that is, kind of really sort of exploring kind of the psychological aspect and sort of the human side of this story in a way where, it's quite complex. It's very layered. Like, you probably guessed it already, but I really liked this episode. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I just admired what Noah Hawley was doing. There was so much that I liked about this episode, especially the story of Morrow. That was the highlight for me. And just watching this episode a second time kind of really reaffirmed how I felt about it. Like, I get people's criticisms of it, I do. And, it is hard to actually kind of argue back or debate back against those, because I get it. It's there within the show. But my sort of perspective of this story and where these characters were at was in such a place where it actually felt very authentic to me. It felt natural, and it was more of, like, the episode to me was more of a psychological dive into where these characters are at mentally, how these people would be feeling due to what they've experienced and, working for this corporate entity, giving their lives basically to this corporate entity. And I think Morrow and his character in many ways is the catalyst really of what it is they are exploring specifically within this episode. Like I mentioned in previous episodes, where I feel like the alien is kind of being used as the vessel or the catalyst to really explore sort of the horror when it comes to sort of the human themes, the very human themes around what we are capable of as humans. I feel like Morrow is also that kind of catalyst here. His story is kind of the catalyst of what it is they are really sort of attempting to explore within this story, within this particular episode. Babu Sisay, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Apologies if it's incorrect. He plays Morrow, and he is absolutely superb in this show. He is probably my favourite character, especially after episode 5. I just love how he's bringing this character to life, and what we witness unfold with this character in this show, I'm gonna say it, it floored me. Like, I felt like it was incredibly clever in just kind of flipping our sort of perception of how we felt about this character initially. And it just flips everything on its head, and sort of where you feel or who you feel that character is before episode 5. By the end of episode 5, it's going to be, well, for me it was anyway, completely different. And it just added so much more depth and layers to this character in a way that just, yeah, I absolutely admired. Like, the final couple of minutes with this character in episode 5, where you kind of, you re-experience the moment where he goes into the mother and he jumps into the safety room just as the xenomorph is coming through the door. How that scene plays out this time around, like, it gave me goosebumps. And my mouth just fell open because I was witnessing a scene play out, the exact same scene, but play out in a way that just changed the context of everything. Not just that moment, but about who the character is, his journey and his story. And I fucking admired that. And just the way in which, he cuts himself off in that moment from what's going on by thinking back on his life with his daughter on Earth. And it was an incredible moment where there's emotion there, there's horror there, and I just think it worked beautifully to tell a very layered and complex story when it comes to sort of these human journeys, especially Morrow. And it's an episode where, again, we perceive this character as being completely disconnected before episode 5, completely disconnected almost to humanity, that he's completely 100% committed to this mission. Nothing else matters, nothing else, it's all about completing this mission. And this episode just completely flips that on its head, and again, we get more insight into who this character is. It's a flawed character. Yes, he's very, he's got a mission and he needs to carry this mission out, but there's a lot more there driving him emotionally, mentally. There's a reason to why he's losing perhaps that kind of connection to humanity, you could say. And I fucking loved it. Like, I really, really enjoyed what they were doing with the characters. They are achieving something with the characters within this show, within this story, that they didn't quite nail in Alien Romulus. Like, I really liked Alien Romulus, but I felt like they struggled with the character stories in that movie. But yeah, I am just loving what they are doing with these characters. And I really liked how the creatures played a part in this story. And just sort of like, especially the eye creature, the T. oculus, and that kind of relationship it seems to have formed with the science officer. But actually, I mean, the creature warns, or is trying to warn the science officer in that moment. The tick-like creature, the bloodsucker, is loose. Parasites fight for resources, and the parasite sees this particular character as a host. But obviously, if this host becomes infected with another parasite, it's not going to be able to take hold of it. And that's kind of how I saw that moment, playing out. And I just really liked how that kind of that aspect of these creatures, the parasitic nature of these creatures, kind of played into the horror as well. Parasites compete for resources, and that is kind of what I saw really coming to life here within moments of this episode. And let's talk about the xenomorph, the alien here in this episode. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Yes, it's a guy in a fucking suit, right? But it worked. For me personally, it worked. It looked great. I think with the lighting, how the camera was used, the set, how sort of the alien sort of looked within the set design, and sort of how it moved. Like, I think they did a wonderful job of trying to recapture that kind of the haunting movement of the alien that I felt like we've only ever seen once, and that was in the original movie. I always admired how the alien moved in that original movie, and we've never seen it since, up until now, where they do try to kind of hone in on that. So, for example, when the alien is walking down the corridor towards Zoya, the acting captain who was running away from the alien. And by the way, it's a beautiful moment there, a beautiful shot with the lighting and how the light comes down the corridor, and you see the silhouette of the xenomorph. It just looks great. But that movement that the alien is doing down that corridor, it just took me back to that kind of the haunting movement of the alien within that original movie, especially that scene where it's going towards Lambert, and you've kind of just got that shot of the alien kind of, it's kind of very slow and almost like an elegance to it, the way in which the alien moves in that kind of very brief moment. It's a very quick shot, but it's a shot that always stuck with me. It's a shot that always sort of was kind of like cemented in my mind because I just loved how the alien moved, and I just feel like we've never really gotten that, and I think they were really kind of tap into that within this episode. And look, don't get me wrong, is the show perfect? I don't think it's quite perfect. Yes, I've got minor niggles with it. It has its flaws. They might be different to everyone else's. But, you know, is the suit perfect? Not really. I think it could do with a bit more KY jelly. It's a little bit too dry for my liking. And, you know, like going back to that moment that I just spoke about, you know, about sort of recapturing that kind of haunting, stalking sort of movement that the alien had in the original movie. Do they completely capture that? Not really, but you could see what they're going for. They're attempting that, and I really liked that. I admired it. And, you know, there's a lot of moments visually that I dug, that I really admired, and it feels like I am in an authentic alien story. It feels authentic. It feels like I am within the alien story that is within the same world of the 1979 movie, of Aliens, of Alien 3. It has that kind of dirty, greasy, sweaty, you know, that grimy feel to it. It's not perfect, but for me, the reason why the show is working as much as it is because of the characters and their journeys and their stories. Like I said, I've seen the episode twice now. I watched it before filming this, so it's fresh in my mind, and it reaffirmed how I felt the first time around. Maybe I'm completely off. Maybe I'm completely wrong or off the scent with what I feel like personally that Noah Hawley has attempted to do with the writing and with these characters, but that's how I'm seeing it, and I am completely on board. I am invested. I think it's honouring what's come before with those original movies in a way that is beautifully done. It feels natural. It feels organic, you know, visually, from the score to sort of these characters' stories. I mean, there's elements of Morrow that reminds me of Ellen Ripley and sort of her motivations. In many ways, he is the opposite end of who Ripley was, but also quite similar in many ways, you could look at it. Probably one of the biggest issues that I had with this episode, but because I'm so invested with the story and I'm liking what they're doing with the characters, that it didn't really throw me out, but it was kind of more of something that kind of really grated on me in moments, and it was an issue that I had, but again, like I said, it wasn't big enough to kind of really take me out of the experience. And that is the actress who is bringing the acting captain Zoya to life. Richa Marjani is her name, and her performance just isn't working for me. It didn't work for me in the first episode, and watching episode 5 here now, where you got a lot more of the character, there was just something about her performance that just stood out compared to everyone else, compared to how everyone else is bringing their performances, you know, bringing their characters to life. Her performance just felt very wooden, and just it wasn't working for me. And so that was probably one of the major issues I had with this particular episode. And then lastly, when it comes to the music, like I said, I absolutely adore the music in this show and how it, I think, beautifully honours what's come before, but also be something that is original to this story. But I was critical of sort of the use of heavy metal music throughout this show. It hasn't kind of worked, or hasn't always worked for me. But then kind of when I've looked at it from a different perception or perspective, I kind of get it as well. But this is the one and only time where, you know, and maybe I'm a bit biased here because I do like the Smashing Pumpkins, but how the Smashing Pumpkins song kind of plays, you know, into the credits, where it starts with the drum roll, which immediately takes me to the classic, you know, you know, the drum roll from Aliens, and I just thought, oh, that actually really worked. Like, that music, that song, that track actually really worked for me. I could talk about this episode, or I could talk about the show for a lot longer, but I'm going to wrap the review up now. I just kind of really wanted to say, I think they were the points that I really wanted to get across about this particular episode. I haven't, up until this episode, I've kind of avoided sort of delving into sort of the online sort of criticisms of the show, whatever that be, negative or positive. And I've sort of delved into some of that before watching this episode for a second time. And even, like I said, face to face with people that I know, people that I work with who are watching this show. we completely disagree on a lot of it. And so I think I might be in a minority when it comes to sort of how I felt with this episode and just with the show in general. But I also find that quite exciting. But yeah, that's how I felt about episode 5. Like I said, I could go on and on and on. And so yeah, look, that's enough rambling from me. They are my thoughts on Alien Earth, episode 5, In Space, No One. And I will be giving episode 5... So yeah, they are my thoughts on episode 5 of Alien Earth. What do you guys think? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, which believe me, you deserve an award if you have, to listen to me ramble on. But if you have made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future movie reviews and TV reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. And I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone that has supported the channel, old and new, you know, whether it be liking, commenting, subscribing. It means the world to me, and a big hello and thank you for those most recent subscribers that have joined me on this journey. It will always overwhelm me that so many of you do want to follow just some random Welsh geek ramble on about film and TV. So yeah, that's it from me for now, guys. Thank you all for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll be catching you guys soon.